so we're still working through this thing. Shop is not open, we're closed, but we have enough cars here where we can stay busy for the next month. Luckily, we had some cars brought in, and we have enough stuff on standby where we can stay busy. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are off work, watching YouTube, maybe coming across this video, yeah, we're gonna keep going and keep making videos throughout this deal going on, and hopefully everybody that's out there is staying healthy, and if you're, if you get sick, hopefully you make it through, and we don't want to see bad stuff happen to good people, obviously. So anyway, again, we are working. I got stuff on the dyno behind me here, so let's go check this out. 2013 ZR1, badass car. I got the battery charger on it there. I was just flashing another tune in it. So I've been doing some working runs on it. Good customer of ours, local guy to Rockford area. Bought this a couple weeks ago out of Texas. Professional road racer owned it. Shop down there built it. Has an engine built from another shop in Michigan. And so basically we've done no mechanicals to this car. Yeah, I did a couple little things on it so far just to get it so I could do some pulls on it, but it's set up for road racing. See, it's got that, maybe you can't, it's a little dark. It's got a big road race carbon wing on it. It's got that heat extractor carbon hood. Just kind of this stuff I'm gonna go over real quick. Aftermarket front bumper cover with some added venting. It's got some added heat exchangers. It's got a big aluminum radiator. Car's set up for road racing. I mean, it is set up. It's on coilovers. It's got spherical control arm bushings front and back. It's got sway bars. It's got a carbon. This splitter extends underneath the car like a carbon tray, basically a direct air into the car. So it is a 416 stroker. It's got a 4-inch crank in it. It's got I want to say it's got Cali. I'd have to look at the build sheet again. Cali's parts, Cali's crank rods. I think it's got Wesseco pistons in it. Aftermarket inlet. I should say aftermarket lower snout. It's got a stock throttle body, surprisingly, but this is just the way it came to us. Fabricated inlet, cold air pipe. Stock balancer, so it does not have a lower balancer pulley on it. It's a stock balancer. It does have a 2.38-inch upper supercharger pulley, and that's pretty much it as far as boost goes. So we're only seeing about 13 pounds of boost at peak, 12.5 to 30, 12.5 mid-range, 13 peak. It's got 1 7/8 headers on it. It's got a full 3-inch exhaust on it with aftermarket mufflers. It's got, obviously going back down to where those auxiliary heat exchangers are. It's got some stuff upgraded on the cooling. Obviously hugely important in road racing. And again, this customer bought this car to road racing. He wants to get back. He's done some a little bit of road racing in the past, and he wants to get back into it. So this is what he bought this car for, and it is definitely suited for it. So yeah, tuning wise, HP tuners, obviously I'm doing a speed density tune. So you can see with this front bumper, and I run into this with some C6s sometimes, especially when they got aftermarket hoods and stuff going on like this, where this bumper has an opening for the air filter, so that air filter is exposed to, the air coming across the nose of the car. So what happens in these things, and I see it sometimes, is the mass airflow sensor, which is the primary source of telling a computer how much air is coming in the engine so it can calculate load and come up with a timing and a fueling figure, the air coming through here, because it's forcing air into this tube, and it will come through this filter and be turbulent. And so what I mean by turbulent is swirling through here, it's swirling through that tube. These mass airflow sensors like laminar flow. They like straight airflow coming through here, where the air is moving in a steady column straight through that tube, not all mixed up and turbulent. And so with something like this, even at 40 or 50 miles an hour, you're going to see turbulent flow across that mass airflow sensor. Even though it's set back from that filter, it's still going to be not perfect. And he did complain, he brought it in, he was having a problem where he'd stick the clutch in at 30, 40 miles an hour and then the car would die. It would just come down and it wouldn't hold idle steady and eventually roll and die. So that's what I was seeing with it, and I've seen that before on some other C6s with a similar setup to this, where the filter is just kind of hanging out in the wind, which isn't a bad thing. You're getting nice cool air, but the mass airflow sensor really doesn't like that. It's a very sensitive instrument, and if it sees turbulent air, basically the reading you're getting back to the computer is real choppy. It's not a consistent reading. So, and it does mess with the calculated air mass in the ECU, which makes, especially when you got a cam and you got big injectors, and the fueling's got to be really precise to get them to run nice. Now, wide open throttle, I did some dyno pulls with it, still using the mass airflow sensor. Wide open throttle, it's fine, but just idling, even with my dyno fans running, I'm getting turbulent air, and you can see it on the mass airflow curve where it's real choppy. And so what you do about that is, instead of using the mass airflow sensor, you go to the MAP sensor, so the manifold pressure sensor, which is normally an auxiliary way that the GM strategy uses this sensor for like transient fueling. So if you like blip the throttle, it's going to look at that change in MAP. It's also going to, it's going to look at both at the same time. So stock tune's going to look at both of these at the same time. A VE tune or a speed density tune in GM, at HP tuners, there's some patches you can apply to the calibration. You can write in a new entire calibration in that just uses this sensor. This is just along for the ride then. There is an intake air temperature sensor in this thing, so there's 5 wires on it. 3 of them are for the mass airflow sensor, 2 of them are for the intake air temp sensor, and that's the intake air temp sensor pre-supercharger. There's also an intake air temp sensor in the supercharger itself, after the rotors, after the intercooler bricks, that's measuring what's actually going into the motor. That's more important on these superchargers, is that's IAT2, so or intake air temperature 2, or number 2. That's more primarily used for, changes in timing and maybe some fueling trim, as far as up and down. This is just kind of there to, it is used a little bit, but it's, at this point, it's just kind of along for the ride, but I'll leave it plugged in. It's nice to see your pre-blower IATs, and so we'll leave it hooked up. Otherwise, I think I kind of covered all the modifications on it. I don't think there's been any blower porting done. You guys might notice this belt deal looks kind of goofy. So one of the other issues, and I found this out after I did my first dyno pull, I should say my second dyno pull, when I actually wound it all the way out, the belt was slipping. So what I found, which is kind of odd, it had the stock belt on it. So stock length belt with that smaller pulley, the belt was too long. Tensioner was topped out. It didn't have any room to tension once the belt stretched a little bit under load, and it was slipping. So I was losing boost after 5,000 RPM. The boost was just kind of dropping off to like 8 pounds and 7 pounds. The correct belt for it is a week out, and I ordered it last week. Hopefully we'll see it in a few days, but to keep going here at the shop and to keep things going, I thought I'd try an 8 rib we had laying around. That is the right length, 82.5 inch length that we needed. I had one in our belt bin. We have a bunch of spare belts and extra belts that we just accumulated over the years, and it's working. It's holding boost. I'm seeing 13 pounds. It's actually, the boost is actually climbing a little bit towards the top, towards 69, 7,000. So I know that is holding now. I'm not seeing any belt dust. The car is not going to leave the shop with this belt on it. I'm just using it now for testing and getting the dyno done. It's the dyno tuning done. Before I even take it out on the street, I want to put once I get that belt in, I'll put that the stock, or I should say the 11 rib, the shorter 11 rib belt on it. So basically the correct belt for the setup. So yeah, otherwise, working run wise, that's kind of my progression. I kind of brought up, I started working on this car last week, and kind of in between some other stuff, and so you can kind of see how I've worked up to it to where I'm at now. I think I got it pretty much dialed in. I added a little bit of fuel. It was a little lean. I've been kind of creeping up in the timing a little bit, but some of these runs have been getting hotter and hotter as far as IATs. And I kind of did some back-to-back stuff quickly just to kind of see where my IATs were, and while adjusting some of the fueling and stuff. So car's been sitting for about 15 minutes now. I'm going to do a final run. I added a little bit more fuel. I added a smidge more timing, but I don't really want to go any more timing. This car is going to be run on 93 octane for now, and I don't want to push stuff too far. This is already more than enough horsepower for a road race car. You know, we get some of these customers in here that want 1,000 horsepower to go road racing. That's just not necessary, especially for, you know, an entry-level driver, a, you know, intermediate driver. There's just, this is more than enough. This car with a 650 on the tire, you know, like Road America's 3-hour drive from us, that's a popular track, and there's a smaller track close to us called Blackhawk Farms, that's about 45 minutes away. Blackhawk Farms, 2-mile track, tight corners. There's no way you'd ever use this much power on that track. The straightaway isn't very long. Road America, obviously, you're going to use some of that power, but again, even a professional driver, you know, a professional driver might be able to use all this horsepower in a car like this. I mean, these C6 ZR1s are extremely capable track cars, obviously, very track focused, but I think this is enough horsepower for now. In the future, we might do E85 up the boost, you know, we'll see. But for now, this is where I'm at with the combination, you know, basically where this, the way the car was brought to me. This is kind of where I'm at right now, and I'm pretty happy with this. You know, for the boost level, that's pretty good. Yeah, you kind of see where I was working up to. So you can see this blue line here. That's where the boost is falling off. You can see where the boost is just like dying. I put the, I got this belt on it. I got a full boost run. It was a little rich up top. So then I went to my speed density tuning. I did kind of preliminary set the timing low because again, I didn't quite, I read the tune out of it. It looked pretty safe, but I like to just start off safe and kind of work my way up just because it's an unknown deal. And, you know, you just never know where stuff is at. So that's where I ended up, you know, 725 was that red run. That's when I got the boost under control. So obviously a big jump, just getting the boost back up. 760, I put some timing into it. Put the speed density into it, did some working runs, or just did some driving up and down, got a VE table built on it. I can show you that in a sec. And then I started adding some timing, 767, 769. I just added a smidge. That was more of like a back-to-back hot run, right? Quick threw some timing at it, loaded a tune in, and did it as fast as I could to kind of do a hot run just to see what it was doing if I added timing and it was hot. Just, again, I always like testing all these little scenarios, especially a car like this where it's gonna get put through the paces on a road course. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close these out and start with the press screen. I'm not even gonna set the camera down, guys. I want to do a couple in-car pulls with camera in hand. So I'm gonna hit all these fans. Got a bunch of vent fans, obviously. Exhaust fans for the shop, and so bear with me. Stuff plugged in and turned on. I'm gonna quick unhook that battery charger. If there's any inkling on a car like this car was sitting for 2 years and the battery was kind of weak. You don't want to be flashing with HP tuners or any sort of flashing. You do not want to do that with a car that has a low battery, because if the battery drops below the threshold voltage of the ECU while it's flashing, it can break the PCM, and that's an expensive mistake. So we don't want to have to deal with brick PCMs, especially on a C6 Vex, and you got to pull the fender and switch the PCM out, and it's a pain in the butt. So I always hook a battery charger up if there's any inkling that the battery is a little bit weak. So I should have most of the heat in it here. Let's fire it up. Kind of see where we're at. So I'll quick jump out again now that I fired up, so you guys can hear the idle. It's got a nice idle to it. It's got a good chop. Oh yeah. These cars are just so badass. If you ever get the chance to drive one, especially a high horsepower one, like a 900 plus wheel one, do it, because they're fast. All right, so IAT, we're at 158. Oil temp 130. I want to see maybe a smidge more oil temp than that, but let's start this thing rolling here. Intake air temp 2, 91. That's pretty good. That's about where I've been on most of those other runs. Other than that very last one I did, I was up over 100 just to kind of see where it was. I want to get the coolant temp up into the 170s though, so bear with me while I get some heat in this thing. Data log. Had a little bit of a blip in the air fuel there. I'm shooting, so what I'm shooting for on Lambda here is 0.8 on this car. So right on the roll on, I had a little, must have a cell on the VE is smidge lean. It looks pretty good though. On a smidge rich there. And again, I'm looking at this yellow line, guys. That's my air fuel ratio. So that's this, again, this is the pull I just did. Knock sensor's not a peep, that's good. Timing, I'm seeing what I think is pretty aggressive, and I don't want to go any higher than this. Not on pump gas, not for a road race car. 20 degrees, ramping up to 26, and that's quite a bit of timing. I mean, again, this motor is a 9.7-to-1 motor. Camshaft isn't anything too crazy. Like I said, I think it's like an upper 220s on the intake for duration at 50 and like a low 240s. It's nothing crazy. But yeah, that looks pretty good. You can see boost is about 12.5, drops down to 12 at 5,300, and then ramps back up to just touching 13 pounds there at 6,800. Pretty typical boost curve of what you see on a stock blower with a cam, and especially a stroker motor. You get bigger inch motor like this, for an LS motor, and where the engine gets real efficient, the blower is, the engine's going to be able to draw more air in by itself, and the blower is going to, there's less resistance on the blower. Boost is basically just up against the restriction. It's just, the more restriction, the more boost. So when the engine's more efficient, there's less restriction, and the boost drops a little bit. So, down at the bottom end where that cam is maybe less efficient, down 3,300, there's a little bit more boost. You just see it. I mean, we're talking a half a pound of drop. And then towards the top where the engine starts to, maybe run out of camshaft again. For this inch motor, this cam isn't a giant cam. So, but again, we're talking, 12.5 to 12 to 13. So it's just moving around a little bit, nothing crazy. Then I'll get this car out on the street and drive it around a little bit, and that's really where my final tuning process takes place, is on the street, driving in a real world situation. The dyno, you can get it 95% there, but to get that last little bit here and there, you got to drive it on the street. So at least that's how I do it. And I take them for a pretty substantial, so I'll drive it around. I'm not beating on it, but I'll cruise it around in traffic for a half hour, 45 minutes to make sure that it can sit in traffic and idle. And, you know, if it gets stuck in traffic for, you know, this guy's going to street drive this car, he gets stuck in traffic for 45 minutes even. You know, things got to sit and the cooling fan's running and the blower gets real hot, and you got to make sure it's still going to idle, and you pull away and you still be able to roll onto the throttle, getting on, you know, on ramp or pulling out of traffic when you're, after sitting on the interstate driving past an accident or something stupid like that. All those real world situations that you can get in with, even with a modified car like this, if you're going to drive it, you know, for a daily or part of a daily driver. So, all right, that's the boring stuff. Let's look at the dynograph. I'm going to turn those fans off first so we can talk, and back over to the computer screen. So I'm pretty happy with that. 772, 793 torque. Not bad. Again, pump gas, 13 pounds of boost. I know it is, you know, maybe some of you guys out there, oh, that should be making 900 plus wheel. Yeah, but I have made 900 wheel on a ZR1 with a stock bottom end, but that's on E85, that's on 18 pounds of boost, you know, with a ported blower, a giant inlet, a big throttle body, a 5-inch intake, 2-inch headers. I mean, there's a bunch more stuff that we could do to this car to make it, you know, make more power. But this is more, again, we go back to road racing, this is more than enough power for road racing. So yeah, so let's we'll bring up that first full pull I did. That's how the car came in. Again, it wasn't mechanically right, but I always just kind of like to do a comparison because I did kind of do a halfway baseline on it. That was this, so this 694, all I had done at that point was just read the tune out, and I hadn't made any changes to it. But yeah, we were getting belt slip. I mean, you can see where the boost just wasn't there. So temporarily fix the belt. Again, I'm going to get the correct belt for it. Hopefully we'll see that in the next few days. I can put that on, then I can take it on the street, do some street driving. But yeah, and then, you know, obviously you saw just on those other working runs I did, kind of working up through the tune and working the VE table, getting that dialed in, and then applying some timing to it. So to where we're at now, you know, I saw, you know, again, 20, ramping up to 26. That's usually how I do my timing curves on these boosted cars on pump gas. You should try to put just a little less timing in them down low, and otherwise there's no need to try to punch a bunch of timing at it at 2,500 RPM where it's already making, I mean, we're talking it's making 750 foot-pounds of torque at 2,500 RPM. You know, you're in second gear and you're trying to pull out of a corner with that much torque as it is, and, you know, we're almost 800 foot-pounds of torque. So pretty typical with a, you know, with even a throttle bodies change on this thing. You know, I go back to where more power can be made. I mean, again, this is tons of power, and even a throttle body, we'd probably see a pound of boost, I bet, maybe a little bit more. We'd probably see 25 wheel with just a throttle body swap on this thing, because I think that aftermarket inlet that's on it is set up for 102 millimeter. So obviously I think that intake on it's like a 4.5-inch intake. Everything's pretty much there. Not sure why it's got a stock throttle body on it, but whatever reason it does. Again, it's making enough power as it is for now, but yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So we'll keep plugging away here at the shop. We got some other stuff coming down the line. We got some ZL1s. We got a ZL1 1LE that we're doing a camshaft on, ported heads on, big injectors, big high pressure fuel pump, and E85. So that'll be cool. Keeping the stock bottom end. And a 2650. Can't forget to mention that on top of all that stuff. So that one we'll be able to have a little bit of fun with. That guy's going to road race that car, so we're going to pull that down for the road course, and then the street will jack it up. So you can kind of see it behind me there. This little Falcon back there, an AC system on that. So we got all sorts of work here. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.